So, an interesting first session, and many thanks to the panel for their insights on that. Let's move on to the second session. And most of you that are advertisers or are in the business know that the fundamental component that drives programmatic is data, whether that be first party or third party. And a lot of you, when you think about moving into programmatic or moving into a way to really access your data more effectively, the first thing, three letters you think of are DMP. And a lot of people are confused about DMPs and are confused about how they can use that data. But one thing is for sure, that if you absolutely leverage the data as effectively as you can, then you generate a competitive advantage. So in the new world, Oracle recognized as what I would call a disruptor. Am I allowed to say Oracle's a disruptor? I think Oracle is a disruptor. Oracle recognized a couple of years ago that data was going to be an incredibly important component of what they were putting together as a sort of end-to-end solution, and they acquired BlueKai. Now, Zuzanna was part of BlueKai at that time, and then has progressed, and I'm going to read your title, it's quite long, isn't it? Progressed to become the Director of Data Management Platform EMEA for the Oracle Marketing Cloud. So that is right in the sweet spot in terms of how data should be used. So Zuzanna's very kindly come today to sort of give you some practical tips around how to leverage data and how to sort of engage with your DMP. So welcome, Zuzanna.
Thank you. Am I on? Yeah?
You are on.
So forgive me for sitting. I don't normally present sitting down, but it's quite intimate here, and there's a risk of me ending up in someone's lap if I start to pace. So I think this is safer. So thank you very much, Chris, for the introduction. As Chris said, so I look after the DMP business for Oracle Marketing Cloud, and essentially my role and my team's role is to help brands and media owners understand what the DMP can do for them, so what are some of the key use cases that can be activated, help to architect the actual individual platform solution, and then through to deployment and ongoing account management of the platform. So really, we sort of sit across that end-to-end process. And picking up very much from what you heard this morning, and as Chris just said, you know, with the vast and rapid adoption of programmatic, comes very hot on the heels of that, the demand for data. So the smart algorithms, the bidding decisions are powered by data, and it's no surprise that there's lots of technologies popping up that sit across both the buy and sell side to support brands and publishers harness that data and activate that data. And one of those technologies is a DMP. Now, obviously our space is full of technology, so I won't presume all of you know what a DMP is, even though I see a few friendly client faces in the room. So I'll just start with a very, very quick overview as to, you know, if you're thinking about a DMP, broadly, high level, what does it do? So there's sort of three pieces to it. Number one is the aggregation of data. So data from all of your sources, be that offline data, CRM data, across digital data, both across the cookie and across mobile environments. So all of that data comes together. And then the second stage is giving that data structure. So bringing all of that data together, harnessing it, unifying it, and giving it a categorization so you can actually start to segment and use that data for insights, analytics, and actually building audiences. And then the third stage, and most importantly, is the actual activation. So being able to, once you've segmented that data and built your audiences, get those audiences out across the digital ecosystem. So that's kind of a very top overview as to what a DMP will actually do. And I thought it'd be useful to share with you a little bit about the market adoption and where we see the industry being right now. So at the start of this year, we commissioned some research with ExchangeWire and eConsultancy. And across the two companies, we covered 200 marketing divisions and 200 brands and publishers. And some of the questions we asked were, you know, are you using a DMP today? What are the key factors for you using it? What are the key things you're doing with it if you are using it? If you're not using it, are you likely to? If not, why not? So I wanted to share some of the information with you. Very interestingly, of all of the companies we spoke to, almost 50% said yep, we've got a DMP in place. But I think what was more telling was that actually the majority had only just done that. Less than 12 months they had adopted the DMP. So it's growing and it's a rapid adoption, but it's very, very early days as well. In addition to that, if we spoke to the companies and said, okay, so what are you looking at the DMP to be doing? And a lot have said, a big focus was, well, I need data for my programmatic, I need to power the bidding decisions. So that's a big focus and where I think the DMP, I'm going to point the investment of my DMP. But also a lot of companies said, well, we know we're going to start with programmatic or we're going to start with display, but actually over time we want to use the platform across other marketing channels. And then some more advanced clients were saying, well, actually we even use the DMP beyond marketing, so it informs our product development and our consumer interaction. So it really is a technology that, whilst most of us sitting here today in the room are thinking through the lens of marketing, that over time we see it being much broader adopted across the businesses. So when we sum up that research, and both sort of companies very much said that we're seeing the DMP move from what was emerging really to today mainstream. And I think that kind of line was drawn in the sand in September at the ATS summit in London, when we actually said, yeah, we're now a mainstream technology. It's no longer a piece of emerging tech. So with that in mind, I thought it'd be useful just to share from our experience. I'm now in my 3rd year of supporting clients with their DMP quest as to, if you're thinking about it, what are some of the top tips or experiences that we've learned that we can share to help drive your thinking. And so the first one really, and sort of more so around, if we're looking why companies are really calling on the DMP, and again, this is a piece that came out of the research, was that yes, there's lots of third-party data available, but that's not really a unique differentiator. It doesn't really give me any competitive advantage because anyone can go out in the market and buy that third-party data. What's really unique is my data, my first-party data, the stuff I hold on my users, what they do within my environment. So a lot of businesses sort of put their hand up and said, first and foremost, the desire for the DMP is we want to activate our first-party data. And really where the sort of DMP sits is that I would say sort of like the central hub, or almost like the brain within your business, where all of that data comes together. And it effectively becomes then one source of truth that no matter what your marketing channels or tactics are, whether you're doing it yourself, through your agency, through specialist providers, everybody can pull down data that's been unified, that has one uniform view of it. You're no longer relying on individual channels or individual providers to define your audiences. So, in terms of what have we learned, or what are useful learnings to share with you, I think the first one is, when we talk about the DMP, the picture we paint is that you really want to think about investing in an enterprise-grade platform. You want to think about leveraging the DMP from that very first interaction with an unknown user, whether it's through a paid media channel like search or display, or whether it's when somebody lands on your website, you've never seen them before, you don't know who they are, but they're relevant and you've targeted them to come into your environment, all the way through that conversion process to then becoming a customer and then ongoing engagement. So at every single step of that journey, every single step of that consumer path, you can use data to inform the conversation. And that's really the big picture that we paint when we sit down and first consult with clients. To say, you might have an immediate need today. Obviously, you want to be thinking about the long term, and you want to be thinking about the right partner and the right technology that's going to be there with you for the long term. However, sometimes that big picture thinking, what we see, especially at the brand side, really gets in the way of adoption. We sit down with a lot of companies and they're really excited about this technology and they're really excited about all the data they have, and they start to draw these fantastic diagrams. My DMP will talk to your DMP, maybe we'll get 3 other DMPs here, and there's a lot of theory and a lot of big thinking behind this, but 6 months down the line, you're still seeing that big thinking happening. And so one of the very first things that we've learned when we go into businesses is to say, what is your immediate pain point? What do you want to solve for today? definitely think for the long term and make that a key part of your decision as to, you know, who you want to partner with on this technology. But start small. Start with 1 or 2 use cases. Start with maybe 1 team within your business using this technology, just so you can get your hands on the technology, so you can start to see how your data behaves. And from that, every single time we see that where a client thinks they will use the technology and how that evolves is pretty broad. And so it really, once you start to leverage the platform, once you start to activate your data, you really learn as you go along. And we see companies initially, you know, really moving their thought processes once they have the DMPs up and live. So the stats here, again, coming from the research, are that today, yes, as I said, you know, the DMP isn't just for marketing, it's for beyond, but the majority of clients that are leveraging the DMP are very much starting with media, and in a lot of environments, even not media, but just down to the paid for display channel. So they have ambitions to go broader, but it's an area where you can drive quick return on investments. You can show your business that there's a reason why you've invested and made this commitment, and there's value out of that, and then you can build on that. So the first thing is, you know, yeah, absolutely plan big, but be ready to start small. The second piece is around, you know, if you're looking at a platform, how do you choose the right technology vendor in terms of what do you want to do with your data? And I sort of take a step back from just the DMP, but if you think about your approach to programmatic, and if you think, for instance, you know, how Exchange Lab position themselves in that sort of agnostic way, that they don't just partner with one, but partner with many. And certainly the DMP space has adopted that same mentality, in the sense that the technologies you are sending data to today, the media channels you are working with, may not be the technologies and media channels of the future. And so it's really, really important, especially in this rapidly shifting technology environment, that the partner you work with, either one has a breadth of integrations, so that, you know, even if you're not using some of them today, you have the opportunity to do so. Secondly is investing into new areas. So looking at, you know, beyond display, beyond search, beyond paid media channels. What about interactive TV? What about digital TV? It's a conversation we were having earlier at breakfast. You know, that's increasingly coming down the line. So what about data into those environments? So that's really important. And then also, you know, does the company have an open API? If I have my own specialist technology, can I interact that? Can I integrate easily, or do I have to wait for development cycles? So really, if you're making, again, that investment, it's really thinking about, you know, do I work with a company that allows me to have portability and freedom of all of the data that I am investing in putting into that technology? And I think that's a really key piece. Moving off of that, looking down to sort of, okay, so now you've got the DMP in place, how are you going to think about slicing and dicing your audiences? This is really the fantastic use case the DMP enables you to do. Onboard all of these data sets that before have never been combined, so your CRM data and your media data or your website data. And finally, you can analyze these audiences, you can build segments of users that have, you know, that you see in your CRM environment and on your website environment, and really have rich segmentation. One of the things that we see from clients is like, brilliant, so I'm going to let my CRM team build their audiences, I'm going to let my agency do the audiences I need for my paid media, I'm going to let my social team build their audiences, and we're like, whoa, hang on a minute. Well, do you have a central segmentation strategy? You know, is there some data hygiene behind your sort of approach? Have you actually thought about who's going to log in and build the audiences? And I think that's a really, really key piece. A lot of companies don't think of that. They think, great, we've got this tech, now everyone can just get their hands on it. And absolutely, you know, it should be accessible to all, but I think there needs to be a little bit of filtration and a little bit of organization. So being really clear in, if you are having lots of different divisions building segments in the DMP, you know, having one centralized naming convention is absolutely key, because otherwise you'll end up, you know, with thousands and thousands of lines of audiences and no one can make any sense out of them. Secondly, do you want to have everybody accessing the raw data to actually drive the segmentation, or is it better to maybe have a central team? A lot of companies, if they already have a business intelligence team, or a sort of data science team, they might be doing the actual segmentation and then allowing others to actually access those segments and pull that data down. So having a clear segmentation strategy before you kind of set everybody loose on the platform is a really good idea. Companies that haven't done this, that are now sort of getting to the scale where, yep, they're really using the DMP across multiple channels, are now having to sort of go back and do a cleanup job. So it's been a steep learning curve, but definitely one that we would recommend up front. And then this is a bit of an eyesore chart. It is the actual DMP spider architecture of one of our clients, Moneysupermarket. So Moneysupermarket are now in their 4th year of DMP adoption with us. If you don't know them from a sort of digital environment, they're pretty well recognized as a spokesperson for our industry. They're very innovative as a company, and they're always pushing the envelope on new technology adoption. And it does look like an eyesore, and effectively it calls out all of the different channels, all of the different environments they are pulling data from and into. Just to sort of orientate you with this, so the blue, I think it's blue, blue is data in, red is data out, green is what they're in the process of testing, and we've just done our recent quarterly business review with them, and yellow is what we're talking about implementing next. So this is a lot. This didn't happen overnight. It took them 3 years to get to this space. And the reason why they are, one, so advanced, two, they now have such a competitive advantage in what they're doing with their data is because from the very beginning, they've been really open to failing and testing. Try a channel, see if it works. If it doesn't work, take the learnings from it and move on. Whilst they absolutely, you know, like every business, have to hit targets, have KPIs, have performance objectives, and especially as they're paying in addition for a technology, you know, they need to make that revenue back. At the same time, their business is very open and gives them space to, outside of, you know, your day-to-day track and the business you need to deliver, you have a little bit of bandwidth, a little bit of leeway just to try things. So test and learn is a really big one. Don't be so harsh and rigid when you're thinking about your technology adoption, not to give yourself any wiggle room for that. You'll drive much quicker value and much quicker, broader adoption of your DMPs if you can have a little bit of flexibility around that. And then the last piece is, you know, consider partnering. So the overall biggest sort of challenge that companies said in terms of DMP adoption, it wasn't, I don't know the technology, or you know, I'm concerned about how much it will cost. It's, I don't have the expertise in my business. I don't have either the data scientists to build my segments. I don't have a team in place to drive the deployment. You know, I'm not resourced to do this. And we see actually a lot of clients stagnate just on this point alone. And I think, you know, the reality here is that there are so many partners or providers that you can work with that can support you along the way. So let's, you know, obviously we're talking about programmatic here. Let's just look at that. If you're already working with programmatic specialists like Exchange Lab, they're already activating your programmatic media activity, you know, across all the different channels you're looking at. Being able to leverage a partner like that to support with your data segmentation strategy, support with pulling the data into their platform so they can leverage it, is a really nice, easy way of being able to drive quicker adoption, being able to remove, you know, your immediate need for having someone in-house yourself to do it. You can start, you know, working through a partner, then over time, it will also help open your eyes up to what types of resources are needed and how you evolve, you know, your own internal resourcing for the DMP. It doesn't have to be done in-house. In the same vein, we see a lot of agencies really stepping up to the table and supporting around either the DMP RFP process or even after that, the deployment and managed services. So there are a lot of partners that are already doing smart things with data, and they could definitely be tapped into supporting your DMP. And so I've just had my time flag, and wow, on time. Thank you. Do we have time for a Q&A now? Yeah?
Well, we haven't, but we're going to take time for questions.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're starting now. Yeah.
Yeah?
think my question is, so now almost onboarding CRM data into any advertising ecosystem, like Google, Twitter, Facebook, I think almost Amazon, I'm sure because of the information that they have about the consumer, they can do that very easily, is something that I think is becoming a default. And more you will see that actually publishers approach advertising and definitely agencies as well to say, look, if you give me your emails, you give me your CRM, then we can do all of this. I find that with the advance of Atlas technology, Google technology, and the connectivity that they established in that, it is really a need for a DMP. I mean, what it is the added value that you think you bring to the table?
Sure. So I think the very fact that you've called out Atlas and Google, if you look at what those technologies represent and their approach to the ecosystem of locking down the doors, walled gardens, I think the biggest question that brands are asking themselves is, do I want to commit all my data into that one environment? It's rare that we see any individual brand solely relying on Google or Facebook for their media activity. So I think the hygiene in having your data stored outside of any individual one media environment in a place where you control that data, you control and rights manage the access to that data, and you have the full portability of that data is key. And especially you said CRM. So companies have for a long time heavily invested in building up their CRM databases, in building the profiles within those databases. That's not something that they are willing just to hand over tomorrow and put into a media environment. So actually one of the increasingly growing areas that we're getting asked for from a DMP activation is, I want to control this data. I want it to be mine. I don't want to have to rely on, on an end channel to have that.
Okay, a couple of things to say to that. And I know interrupting is so long and someone is stopping me. It's very difficult for me to follow. I think.
Sorry, where are you from? Just so people know.
I am at the Metropolitan Group. Before that's my recent appointment. Before I was at the Anime Group, I was the deputy managing director for FEMIA. I tried to deploy Blue Card with certain challenges many years ago. We deployed the aggregate knowledge DMP as well. It is true that from my perspective, from my experience, anything that I can do with the data aggregation at the cookie level, which I think today DMPs is what they offer. I think the matching ratio and the synchronization, it is a challenge for any DMP today in the market. And the reason why, I mentioned the ecosystem that I mentioned is because the first thing that they bring to the table is the activation possibilities, okay? Think, other things that the DMP offers in terms of audience overlay, etc., and you already have them in an ad server, okay? The data is like sexy, you have to put it out, you need to do a lot of kind of cleaning to look at it, but once you've done it once, then you can do the fancy graphs. And for me, really, I actually agree with you in terms of I don't want to live, my advertising doesn't live in one environment. It doesn't live in Google, it doesn't live in Facebook. I want to be very well connected to the rest of the world because we have publishers here on the table that, at the end of the day, they also sell to Google and because they also have the technology to put it in there. But, again, this is, my point is that all that portability that you said and all that matching and intelligence that we need, I don't necessarily see the DMP fulfilling that role. I think kind of structured, data warehouses with intelligent in terms of being able to map in all the points of data that you have in the ecosystem to break those silos. Because we are not going to be for data, Google, Facebook already have the data from consumers. By volume of CRM data, matching it, we're giving us the opportunity to activate it through an ecosystem that it's not all Google, but you ended up connected to the rest of the services that you want to do. You can do PMPs directly through the double-click technology. So at the end of the day, you choose, it's kind of an enabler. And at the end of the day, the data that you have, you are synchronized in that. So again, for me, the point is I really, really, really try because even yesterday someone mentioned for me the word DMP and they redefine again what it is with DMP and handling. Don't tell me that the use case for DMP is only activating my CRM, because I can do that. I think the distribution layer, again, how kind of you solve that, and just to structure the data, I don't know, it's too expensive, frankly. Building a new structured data warehouse costs me less money, much more to run, simpler to use, and all those data sciences that you want, they don't want a DMP. They actually want the raw data.
Yeah, I think, sorry, because I just want to make sure other people have a chance to ask a question, but I think just to finalise your point, I think if you go back to what I said at the beginning, there's sort of three broad pieces. One is harnessing that data, two is giving that data structure, and three is activating it. A data warehouse can do some of that, an ad server can do some of that. The whole point of the DMP is that it does all of that. And it does all of that, if you're working with the right platform, it does it in a deduplicated and real-time manner. And I think, I'm around this morning, so happy to have that discussion.
Yeah, I think Zuzanna will be here at the end,
Yeah.
so I think
okay.
some of those detailed questions on DMPs would be great to do sort of
I'll be
one-to-one
around.
at the end.
Yeah.
So thank you very much, Zuzanna.
Thank you.